This is the Investor Connect podcast program. I'm Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of this show in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, family offices, private equity, and many other investors for early stage and growth companies. I hope you enjoy this episode. Need help in finding investors for your startup, fund, or angel group? 10 Capital provides funding as a service helping you find accredited investors. Contact 10 Capital to gain access to investors for angel and venture capital funds, family office rounds, and syndication raises. To learn more, go to 10capital.group. Well, hello, this is Hall Martin with Investor Connect. Today we're here with Daniel Cohen, general partner at Viola Ventures. Viola Ventures is part of Viola Israel's leading tech-focused investment group with over $3.5 billion of assets under management. Founded in 2000, Viola Ventures empowers early-stage startups to become global leaders. The fund manages over $1 billion and has backed some of Israel's unicorns such as Payoneer, ironSource, Lightricks, Outbrain, Redis Labs, Pagaya, and more. To date, the fund has invested in 82 companies and has recorded over 40 exits. Daniel, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I really appreciate it.
Great. Well, tell us more about your background before investing in early stage companies.
Sure. So I've been doing this for quite some time. So just almost 20 years or exactly 20 years. I've been with Viola for about 8 years. Before that, I was a partner in another Israeli venture fund called Gemini. I was there for about 12 years. Before that, I actually did work in tech companies, both in Israel and in Silicon Valley, kind of late 90s, early 2000s.
Well, great. And so what excites you right now?
First of all, look, I think we're right now in one of the best times for tech in general, one of the best times for tech in Israel. It just, the market is just going crazy. I joke that sometime in 2020 in Corona, when Corona hit, we were thinking, oh my God, this is the 2001 crisis. And then right after that, it became 2000 at its peak. So we're very excited about what technology is doing to the world. We're very excited about some of the startups in general. And just if, Israel continues like this will be phenomenal.
Great. So you've seen a lot of startups and a lot of investors. What's your advice for people investing in startups? What do you tell them to do before they write that first check?
First of all, what I love about this business is no matter how many years you do it, I think you always encounter a new situation, something that's a little bit different. I always learn in every company, it's a little bit different than the previous one. I think that sometimes, especially in high times and these days, I think it's important to stick to basics and diligence. I think right now people get a little bit overexcited. They think that every company is going to be a unicorn, that every dream will come true. Some will, but it's important to understand, to think still about, basic economic factors, revenue, profit, things like that are a little bit out of favor these days.
Great. And then on the other side of that table, what's your advice for people running startups? What do you tell them to do before they go out for a fundraise?
Yeah, first of all, I think right now, raise money. The markets are good. There's a lot of money out there. As long as interest rates are low, people want to invest in startups. So this is the time to go out and raise. If you're not ready, if you think there's still 6 to 9 months to go, I encourage everybody to take money right now. I think in the preparation, there are a lot of do's and don'ts in fundraising. It's a little bit of combination of explaining your underlying economic assets, but also the ability to tell a really good story on what's the future of the company. And storytelling is always part of fundraising, no matter what. And I always encourage people to get their story as good, as straight as possible, as good as possible. That will really make things easier on the fundraising part.
Great. So how do you see the industry evolving here for startup investing? Where do you think it's going?
In 2015, people said that the markets are too high and that a correction is needed. Look what happened since. The valuations are very high. The optimism level are extremely strong. As long as this continues, I think this will be a great opportunity to enjoy selling companies and realizing valuations. I think this is the time to think more about that part of the business because I think some of the early stage companies are overvalued. So that's kind of the short-term view. I think let's see when the markets turn around, and then it'll be the right time to start buying assets again.
Oh, so what's the biggest change you think you'll see in, say, the next 12 months?
I think the market will continue to hold up. I think we'll continue to see money pouring in, again, as long as interest rates are low. I think some of the trends we're seeing, and especially we're seeing it in the US, but now in Israel as well, is the move, I think, from to more vertical funds. So people are becoming more and more experts in specific niches. And I think we'll continue to see that happening. I think kind of longer term, again, is bigger checks, bigger investments as more investors go into the tech industry. One of the other trends for us is that the opportunity to create exits through secondary and not only through M&A is something that we've seen in the past 3-4 years, and that will continue to be there for us. It's a good thing in the years to come.
Well, that's great. Well, you have quite the track record there with your fund. Can you tell us more about the investment thesis?
So again, I think we do classic early stage with a focus on the Israeli tech market. Early stage, I think the investment thesis is in a fund of about $200 million. We invest about 20 companies. We need 1 to 3 or 4 of them to be fantastic outliers or unicorns or even more than that. So we're looking for the unicorns of Israel. Israel tech scene is a little bit different, I think, than what you see maybe in the US. Very strong on cybersecurity, very strong on AI. And kind of underlying on all of that is what we call scalable go-to-market strategies or using the internet to sell. As long as companies go through kind of online distribution, I think that's a very scalable business model and very, very good for Israeli companies. And we looked at across all the different sectors we invest in.
Well, great. Can you talk about 1 or 2 startups that fit your investment thesis and how they're doing?
Sure. So I think you mentioned that one company that I'm involved with it. I like very much. It's a company called Lightricks. It's a company that was born, raised, and is still working mostly out of Jerusalem in Israel, which is quite unique. They have apps on the App Store, an app called Facetune and an app called Video Leap. They do for video and image editing. And it's a company that managed to reach significant scale, over $200 million of annual revenues, growing very fast. And all that in Jerusalem without having people on the ground in the markets at all. And they sell in the US and China and all over Europe. And that's a great fit, right? It's a strong technology. They built, they use kind of technology they took out of the Hebrew University. So very smart tech. But on top of that, that scalable go-to-market using online distribution and the ability to reach significant scale.
And so when you look at today's market for startups and investors, what do you think is the main challenge that startups face when launching and growing their business?
So I think the biggest challenge we're seeing globally is talent. I think we've shifted from kind of over a long period of time. I think capital was a little bit hard to find in the early days of tech, but talent, there was great talent, especially in Israel. Now I think it's the other way around, right? There's abundance of capital, but finding great people is extremely hard. The competition on talent globally, again, is difficult because, a lot of the talent goes to the big companies, the big tech companies, Amazon, Google, Facebook. Some, big startups are now paying up. And for the small startup, the new guys that have just raised $4 to $5 million and have 10 people to find their next 5 engineers sometimes is a challenge. People go out and outsource in different geographies, which is also hard. So I think overall thinking about talent, trying to have a strategy about how you attract and maintain talent is critical for every startup these days.
Then what's the challenge that you see investors face in today's market?
So again, abundance of capital. What does that mean? Valuations are a little bit too high. I mentioned that. There's a lot of new capital coming in. So our competitors used to be classic venture capital firms in Israel and in the US. But now the hedge funds are coming in. Some of the big funds in general that didn't invest in tech now go into tech. So there's just a lot more money chasing the good startups, which creates, again, the valuations that are a little bit too high, and you got to move and invest really fast if you want to get access and close deals with the best entrepreneurs.
Well, you see a lot of different applications and sectors out there. If you had to pick one or two that you think are really good opportunities for investors to pursue today, what do you put at the top of the list?
So I still, even though it's been hot for over 4 to 5 years, I still think fintech is here to stay and will be on top of the list for value creation for a long time. There's still a lot of innovation there. For Israel, I think cybersecurity, again, as much as there's been a lot of investments in that area, the cybersecurity problems are increasing. There's a lot of need for enterprises and consumers around that. So that's a very strong opportunity. And I think the third one that I'm excited about is AI and what AI is doing to certain verticals. So almost every vertical, I think, is disrupted by the application of AI. And that creates, opportunities that are a little bit different than usual tech investing. But if you can use AI in agriculture and construction and finance and insurance, I think you create some very interesting companies.
Great. Well, the last few minutes that we have here, what else should we cover that we haven't?
I'm excited about the Israel tech scene. Just this week for us at Viola, we took 2 companies public, Payoneer and ironSource. I think there were 4 or 5 Israeli IPOs just this week. Again, all in the US. So Israel tech scene is booming, and just let's hope it will continue to do that.
Well, that's great. Well, how best for listeners to get back in touch with you?
Yeah, so I'm online, but I think the best way is by email, danielc@viola.vc, and I'll happy to answer every email I get.
Great. I'll put that in the show notes. I want to thank you for joining us today and hope to have you back for a follow-up soon.
Thank you. I really appreciate the time.
Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Paul T. Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early-stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.